Hello and welcome. I'm Marcus, and this is the official second episode of Marcus Rambles. Gold star for me! So last time I talked about a movie, so this time I'm going to take a look at a video game. Now, I say take a look, but really I mean show you guys something I think is really cool and really needs more attention than it's getting. This is Stories Untold. It was released on February 27th of this year and developed by No Code Games and published by good old Devolver Digital. I swear, these guys have cornered the market on bizarre indie games that just grab you by the balls and don't let go. So needless to say, Devolver has grabbed my balls. A lot. And I hope they continue to do so in the future with their soft but firm hands. Hotline Miami is a drug-fueled rush. Mother Russia bleeds, kicks you in teeth with personality. Ruiner's coming out soon and looks just goddamn fantastic.
You were trapped. Be who you wanna be. Live your dream. Change the world, they say. But they're lying.
And Stories Untold? Holy shit, is it a roller coaster. I'm going to stop right here and say something that I don't really think many other people would say in this line of work, and that's that you shouldn't watch this video. I'm serious, don't watch it. I want as many fresh minds to experience this game for themselves, spoiler free. If you like text-based adventure games, graphic adventure games, or point and clicks, then you should play Stories Untold, you won't be sorry. I just so happen to be a fan of all of those, so I was set from the get-go. You know what else I'm a fan of? Anthologies. Creepshow, Black Mirror, Twilight Zone, ABCs of Death. I fucking love anthologies. Good or bad, I'll watch it. And Stories Untold is a great anthology of sci-fi and horror stories presented in the format of a television show. Just holy shit, what a fantastic idea. Hell, the tagline alone got me interested before I saw any gameplay. 4 stories, 1 nightmare. And thankfully, the first bit of the game is available as a demo on Steam, so you can try it out there and see if you like it or not. But I guarantee you that first bit is only a taste of just some of the best and weirdest storytelling I've ever encountered. Sorry if it sounds like I'm sucking this game's dick, but I just can't help it, it's so good! So thick, so juicy. Alright, enough fellatiating, let's get on with it. So we've got a level select screen with some pretty interesting names. The House Abandoned, the Lab Conduct, the Station Process, and the Last Session. How ominous. Might as well start from the beginning with House Abandoned. Right from the start, the game immediately lets you know what you're in for. You look at this, you see the objects floating by, you listen to it, and you know. Oh yeah, this is 80s as fuck. No Code is taking some serious inspiration from stuff like John Carpenter with its killer synth track, and something more recent that's also dripping with 80s goodness, Stranger Things. But I feel the main inspiration here is the Twilight Zone, or maybe even the Outer Limits. And every chapter starts out like this too, it's great. There are a few games that try for the whole episodic television format and don't quite hit the mark. Some of them I actually really like, such as Alan Wake. And other than, say, Telltale, who can pull it off most of the time, this is the only game that I've seen that does the television thing and doesn't do it poorly. So this is House Abandoned. Immediately, I'm in love. The presentation alone is awesome. Actually seeing the environment around you for a game like this is a fantastic idea. To anyone who was around in the 80s, this probably looks pretty familiar. Text-based adventure games like this are literally a relic of a bygone era, so something like this definitely helps ease you into it if you're not familiar or comfortable with the concept. Oh yeah, House Abandoned is a text-based adventure game. To all you young kiddos out there, a text-based adventure game is what people used to play before we had fancy graphics. What you read is what you got. No visuals, just text. Believe it or not, these were pretty common back in the day. Text was easier to make than actual graphics, and you only had so much space on a floppy disk. And graphics that were made tended to be made of nothing but wireframe, the most basic of graphic design. Text-based adventure games, they were kind of like those choose-your-own-adventure books from back in the day, only more advanced, in a way. It would be cool to see more games do something like this. It would be fascinating to see the return of the text-based adventure game. I'm not 100% sold on the idea of VR gaming, but I think this game would be kind of cool to see in VR. Seeing the rest of this room would be interesting, as well as the rest of the game's environments. So yeah, House Abandoned. Boy, how the hell do I tackle this one? House Abandoned is an atmospheric horror adventure where your main task is mainly to explore the house. Abandoned. The plot is somewhat vague and incredibly meta. You're visiting your family's summer home after taking a break from something.
It's peaceful, pleasant, and full of great memories. The perfect formula for shit to go wrong.
After a bit of getting used to how the game's played, you go up to your room and turn on your video game console to play House Abandoned. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those experiences. It does an awesome job of fucking with your head and gets you in the mood, draws you in with its excellent atmosphere. The sounds, the music, it's all top notch. Honestly, I'd say my favorite aspect about House Abandoned, and to some degree the other episodes as well, is the sound of the keyboard. This simple sound effect really helps solidify the immersion. You're in the 80s, in your bedroom, sitting at your wood grain desk, playing with your brand new electronic entertainment device. It's perfect for when shit hits the fan. So what constitutes shit hitting the fan? Well, when you turn the game on in the game. Yeah, that's the other thing that drew me in when I first saw Stories Untold, House Abandoned specifically. As you play, the environment around you starts to change and is altered. The pictures on your desk get scratched out, and the walls age and end up looking like shit. And the house in the game you're playing in the game changes as well. Not just that, things you do in the game happen around you. You type on the computer, open door, and within the house you hear a door creak open. You type, go upstairs, and you hear heavy footsteps marching up the stairs. It's really effective and leads to a few scares that actually made me jump. Now, I do have a complaint right from the get-go with Stories Untold, specifically the chapters House Abandoned, Lab Conduct, and Last Session. And it's a familiar problem with any text-based adventure game. Don't get me wrong, I do like games of this nature, but holy fuck, can they be infuriating at times. You see, the way they work is pretty simple. You type what you want to do, and you do it. Only it's not that simple. There's only so many possible ways you can type out the answer to a situation, so to keep things simple, programmers tend to stick with actions and scenarios with 2 to 3 word solutions. Stuff like, go up, lie down, eat bread, bribe mayor, pull out, etc., etc. Playing what combination of 2 common words does the programmer want me to use is not much fun. Thankfully, I didn't run into that problem all that much with House Abandoned. There was only one time I can recall where this happened, but the lab conduct and the last session had me pretty frustrated for a good while. Here's your chance now to back out and try the game for yourself before I go on. Like I said, House Abandoned is free as a demo, and I recommend you try it out for yourself. It is an excellent horror experience. Alright, you ready? Did you play it? Because from here on out, I'm going to spoil some things. Alright, let's do this. So on to the next episode. The Lab Conduct. And... This is definitely a different start. New location, some voice acting, and a ton of bizarre looking equipment before us. Funny enough, a majority of what's floating around in the intro is from this chapter. This time around, we're participating in an experiment being conducted by the U.S. Department of Experimental Sciences. And hey, the character we're playing as has a name, Mr. Asian.
And in the lab itself, our volunteer, Mr. Asian.
Now the goal of this one isn't very clear at the start, but you know it has something to do with Artifact 23, which is inside this big metal box thing and was recovered from Crash Site B. This is sci-fi as fuck. Government-funded experiments, scientists, nondescript crash sites, oh yeah, I eat this shit for breakfast. $20, says Scully and Mulder on the other side of the glass, arguing over the validity of this experiment. Now, the lab conduct is split into two parts, the first part being a kinda, sorta, point-and-click puzzle game. The second half plays just like House Abandoned. Your computer terminal gives you instructions on what to do during each phase of the experiment, and light instructions on how to operate the various pieces of equipment before you. This part is why I freaking love the lab conduct. It really makes you feel like you're participating in an actual sci-fi science experiment. Figuring out how each piece of machinery works and getting them set up in the right order is oddly satisfying. Even more satisfying is the story that unfolds as you play. You quickly get to see what's inside the box, and at first it's not very clear, but eventually, through fiddling around with the various buttons and switches, you see that it's a goddamn heart. I think. It looks enough like a heart for you to think that it is, but it's off just enough for you to think that this thing came out of a non-human entity. I think this is a good time to talk about the graphics. The graphics are good. One look at this and you would think they did what Five Nights at Freddy's did, just an image that they animated around, but you would be wrong. This is a fully 3D environment. And the noise filter over every episode adds to the experience. It really helps give the game a certain tone and look to it. And the game runs pretty smoothly too, until the last session happens. After some more fun finagling, the aforementioned heart explodes, revealing a portal personality orb. Actually, from what I can understand, this is an alien device removed from an alien that grants a hive mind-like ability to its wielder, as we soon see in the second half of Lab Conduct. In this part, you interact with Artifact 23 and live through the memories of the alien that crash-landed on Earth, and holy fucking shit did this part piss me off! It's not bad, but this is where that wording problem comes in. It took me a while to get through, and the puzzle afterwards took even longer. Now, this puzzle's actually pretty good. It kind of reminded me of something you would see in Myst or any other Cyan World puzzle game. You have to configure this alien language into the right sequence, and at first I thought I may have missed something because none of this looked familiar. However, if you look at the orb floating next to you, it flashes a sequence of symbols in rapid succession. Staring at this felt like I was being programmed with subliminal messages. It was a bit surreal, and it did take a while. There was a moment when I thought I was going to have to look up the answer, but I persevered and figured it out, so gold star for me. But I think I may have caused an alien apocalypse in the process, so, gold star for me? Moving on to what I think is the best chapter of the lot, the station process. The station process sees you in a shack as a researcher working at a monitoring station in the far frozen north. That's right, Toronto! Nah, I'm kidding, it's Greenland. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the story here is, as this chapter is rather vague, much like House Abandoned, but unlike House Abandoned, I have a pretty good understanding of what it is that's going on here. In some way, I think this is a sort of continuation of the lab conduct, as aliens are involved. At least I think they're aliens. They're definitely not human. So, why do I hold this chapter in such high regard? Well, this one really does it for me. It has just the right amount of mystery, story, and excellent gameplay. It's the perfect blend. It's more than that, though. Aesthetically, it reminds me of John Carpenter's The Thing. Kurt Russell's somewhere around here getting his shit kicked in at digital chess.
Cheating bitch.
The atmosphere is hostile and exceptionally creepy. It's quiet. Harsh frozen winds rushing about outside, keeping you locked in this cramped room. A lot of the time, I felt very paranoid playing this chapter. It's incredibly unwelcoming, and I felt that at any moment, someone or something was going to grab me or jump into frame. The only other noises come from your coworkers via radio, your computer, and the numbers.
14, 14, 9, 3.
You ever heard of a numbers station before? Essentially, they're radio broadcasts from unknown origins sending out seemingly random assortment of numbers and sometimes words. These are real, and if you have an old CB radio, you can listen to them for yourself if you can find them. And if not, there are plenty of YouTube videos showcasing their broadcasts.
39715. 39715. 39715.
These things are creepy as fuck and fascinating to me. No one really knows what their purpose is. The common theory is that they were used back in the 70s as a way for spies to send secret messages, and that they're still being used to this day. What's even creepier is the voices the stations use themselves. Almost always it's a woman speaking, typically in English, but Russian has also been heard. Sometimes it's an actual person speaking, but other times it's a sort of synthetic voice, a machine recreating human speech patterns. It's some fascinating stuff, and an excellent source for horror inspiration. And this plays a role in the game. You decipher these transmissions for instructions and figure out passwords for your computer terminal. The puzzle solving here is fantastic, and it had me scratching my head so many times. In the good way. It forces you to exhaust the resources at your disposal, which is a single microfilm viewer. You know, those things that mystery movies like to use to show old newspapers? At one point, the numbers stop and it switches to fucking Morse code. I actually sat there for a good 30 minutes trying to figure it out on my own before I found out that there's a code book in the microfilm. Like, look at these are my notes. But what's really funny is that I actually almost had this solved without the code book. This game almost taught me how to decipher Morse code. Holy shit. Let's talk about voice acting. It's hard to say because of how little there is, but I'd say the voice acting here is pretty good. Not everyone is stellar with their delivery, but most of the time the voice actors sound very natural.
This is subject 12-19-86-23, new session entry. We have myself, Dr. Alexander leading, assisted by Dr. Williams, and in the lab itself, our volunteer, Mr. Asian.
I think NS2, Alexia Travers Healy, is the best out of the actors. She really stood out to me. This is also probably a good time to talk about the music. I know I said Devolver had cornered the market on weird, awesome indie games, but I think they also cornered the market on kick-ass indie music too! I haven't played a game by them that didn't have fantastic music going along with it. And the same can be said here. The music is haunting. It really grabs you by the shoulders with icy fingers and doesn't let go. And the soundtrack is available for like $2. Oh, did I mention that this game is $10? Yeah, it's super cheap and packed with quality. I'm kind of surprised. Now's when the game throws you through a loop. After a series of more puzzles, you actually gain control of the character. First-person shooter style. By this point, you know that this is a world in the midst of some kind of invasion, and this visual is fucking creepy to me. Seeing these giant, long tendrils just coming down from the sky, obscured by the snowstorm currently raging, it's very light Lovecraftian. It reminds me of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds or Stephen King's The Mist. Hell, even at the Mountains of Madness. But this isn't the loop you're thrown through. You leave your station to restart the power, and when you come back, this is what you're greeted with. Yeah, you're not seeing things. That's the desk from House Abandoned. The last session is when things get interesting, and it's why I love the storytelling on display here. Although each chapter of Stories Untold acts as their own separate entities, the last session acts as a sort of wraparound story. Mostly anthologies have this, a story going on in between each one of the tales being told. But Stories Untold changes things up by leaving hints and clues throughout each chapter that eventually leads to the conclusion in the last session. I first noticed that something was off in the station process. The person who works at Station N3, the character you're playing as, is named Asian. The same name as the character in the lab conduct. So what's the wraparound story here? Well, this whole time you've been playing as Mr. Asian, who has been watching a television show, Stories Untold.
I think that's enough of that for now.
But he's recently suffered a serious accident and his mind isn't really all there, so some of his memories are getting mixed into the program he's been watching in the hospital.
You're quite fond of the show, aren't you?
But the story doesn't end there. You're soon wheeled away and brought into an interrogation room. Mr. Asian has done something bad, and it's time for him to admit it and face his demons. What follows is a trippy, nightmare stroll down memory lane as we piece together what happened to Mr. Asian, how he ended up in the hospital, and what he did, all of which has been teased and hinted at in the 3 previous chapters. I won't totally spoil the ending for you, but there are 2 things I want to talk about, and they kind of took me out of the experience. Now, up until this point, it's been sounding like I'm gonna shit on this chapter, but really I'm not. I enjoyed this through and through, but there were 2 things that just put a hamper on things. The first being the graphical slowdown. I talked earlier about how I like the graphics of this game, and that still is true. I think the game looks great. However, for whatever reason, the last session runs like utter shit. I was maybe getting 20 frames per second during the walking around segments. The rest of the game runs smoothly, and I have a pretty decent computer. What the issue is, I have no idea. Maybe one of you could explain it. The other thing that took me out of it was the final puzzle. It's another text-based thing, and this just pissed me off. There's no avoiding it. This is the number of word combinations I tried, and none of them worked. All because I was using the wrong fucking wording. Jesus. Nothing is more frustrating than knowing the solution to a puzzle, but having to solve it in a specific order or a specific way. Other than those 2 points, I guess the only other complaints I could have is that there isn't much replayability to this, if that's your kind of thing. I'm one of those guys who can pretty much play whatever, whenever, so it's not that big of a concern for me, but I know I'm not most people, so yeah. And it's not very long. I beat the game in around 4 hours, give or take. But given that the quality of the game has been pretty fantastic, and it is a cheap budget title, I'm willing to overlook the shortness of the game. All in all, I very much enjoyed Stories Untold. With games of a similar ilk, the endings tend to be very wet blanket in nature, or feel like cop-outs. But here, the ending doesn't feel like that. It's a satisfactory ending to what is a very well-made indie budget game. For $10, you can't go wrong. If this is your kind of deal, that is. I know this game isn't for everyone, but from what I can tell, people are enjoying it, and I feel more people need to check this game out. It deserves the attention. Well, that's about it for now. I want to thank you all for joining me again, listening to me ramble like a madman. I'm Marcus, and I hope to see you again in the future. So yeah,